Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Normand, your host. Well, we've got some really fun stories this week, and we're going to have a conversation as the season winds down with Tim Prophit, who is finishing up a five-lake crusade this summer, making sure he hit all five Great Lakes. They just finished a race in Lake Ontario to make that complete. He's also the Barthel Trophy winner, which is the overall trophy given since the 1970s for the overall winner of the two MAC races to Mackinac Island, as well as the TransSuperior, which happens every couple years. We're going to talk about a great summer for Tim and just a little bit about the process that they're getting involved in for next year. We'll also talk a little bit about his health and why it probably makes good sense to have yourself checked out before you jump on a sailboat. Wally Cross comes back, talks a little bit about how to get that boat ready for the end of the year. And Eva Paschke is going to talk to us about winning a big, huge U.S. Sailing Award for being a heroic skipper back in an intercoastal race, blue water race on Lake Erie, and during a college race for the University of Marquette. I think that'll be a fun segment, and I think you'll be real surprised at that conversation. So we've got lots up coming, and we'll be back in a second. Welcome back. We're getting a chance to talk to one of America's great sailors, Tim Prophit. We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk about this summer because I just want to, before we get into the specifics, you're the new Great Lakes superstar according to sailingin canada.org. That's the term that they've used for you. You were a five-lake sailor this year, having competed in all five Great Lakes. You won the Barthel Trophy. You've had a remarkable summer of sailing in a time when you've also had some medical issues, and we're going to get into that. But I want to strictly take on this year. And first of all, congratulations for all the accolades. And does this cap a long career?
Well, I'm not done yet. All this did is cap the summer of 2025. And I just wanted to point out that I don't do this alone. There was 24 different sailors who raced in one or more of the five Great Lakes distance races we did. Plus, there was a cast of dozens who were supportive in terms of delivery, shore support, logistics, and that sort of stuff. And if we have time at some point, not now, but maybe at the end of this thing, I'd like to read off at least the names of the 24 sailors who helped make this happen, because I sure as hell don't do it alone.
We can list those on a scroll at the bottom of this thing of some sort. We can maybe do something along those lines. But let me just run down. Let me just run down the premise. First place in Mills race in June. Ninth place in the Bayview to Mackinac. Lake Huron, Chicago. Third place. TransSuperior, where you won the Barthel Trophy, first overall, and obviously the Whitby, which was the more difficult of the races based on the weather and all the things you did. You originally had been in Lake Ontario early in the season, and that didn't go well. Obviously, you had to come back with some mechanical problems. But what does it? Let's start with the simplest of questions. You went 3,250 miles on a sailboat this summer. That's a lot of miles. My question for you is, what kind of logistics does it take? What kind of stamina does it take to be able to do all that?
Sure. Well, so as you mentioned previously, I was dealing with a little health issue, and so for the five races, I did pre-TAVR, which is transvascular aortic valve replacement. It's basically a tune-up. They go in through your catheter. They don't cut you open. So I was supposed to have it done before the two Mackinac races. A scheduling screw-up made that not possible. And so we ended up doing the Mills race, both MAC races, and the TransSuperior race pre-procedure. And then the Lake Ontario race that we just did, the Whitby 100, was post-procedure. And I got to tell you, day and night, big difference. I was definitely not up to speed, if you will, health-wise for the first four races. I did no driving and breeze above 12 knots. And, I wasn't schlepping sails around. I couldn't grind a winch. I couldn't jump a halyard. I couldn't go up the mast. Do the sort of things I would normally do during the course of a summer. And my crew was great about picking up my slack. And but I like being on boats. I like being on the water. I used to hate deliveries. I did every single leg of every single delivery this summer because guess what? You're still on the water, and the boat's comfortable enough. We had a quite the wild ride down to Chicago after the Baby Mackinac race. We had 4 of us on the boat. We were motoring. We actually had a very brief, full on 90-degree knockdown when we got slapped in the side by a couple of big waves. And for about, I don't know, 6-8 seconds, the prop was out of the water because it was exposed, and I had a nightmare of runaway diesel because the RPMs went up, but that all worked out well.
All right, is it the physical toll? And maybe let me start this question over because I'll have to edit this. Tim, it's obviously an obsession, a disease to some extent. As much as you sail, it's obviously a love of what you do. Was there one race better than another this year? Were they all the same? Was there highlights that you stick out, or is it just a sort of camaraderie with being with all those 24 different sailors who you give credit to?
Well, it's both. It's a camaraderie. Everybody that sails on the boat are people I thoroughly enjoy. They're good friends. They're people I enjoy spending time with. So that makes it not only not a chore or not a grind, but a great pleasure just to be with those people. Of the 5 races, I would say that the TransSuperior was probably our best race. That was a race where it started out light and tricky and shifty, and there was a lot of tactical decisions involved. And at one point, we had come around the Keweenaw Peninsula, and we were, I guess, a little more south than some people, but not south on the beach. And we realized that we needed to get north. And if we had gone north when we said, "Oh, geez, we got to go north now," we probably would have dropped in behind some people and had a tougher time catching up. And so we spent a lot of time looking at weather, looking at current, looking at forecasts. Having Starlink on board was an essential tool to get up-to-date weather information, up-to-date current information. And so I would say the timing of our jibe to head, I guess that'd be northwest from if we rounded Keweenaw Peninsula was critical. And honestly, we nailed it perfectly. We jibed, didn't have a great angle, and 20 minutes later, we were more pressure and a 20-25-degree knock. So that just kind of put us, right down the track, inside of everybody. And that was kind of our whole race right there. But, as far as boat handling, queue handling and whatnot, I mean, that race was just perfect. We did everything right. So, that was a fun race.
The Whippy 100. The Whippy 100 started with a bunch of boats. There were only, I think, 5 to finish. So would that have been the race that puts you guys at most at peril during the season?
2 finished.
Okay.
I don't know if I call it peril. I mean, it was light air to start, and then it got to no air as we had the transition zone. Then we got the new pressure, and so it was from, I don't know, a little bit east of Toronto down to the Grimsby Light, which is in the southwest corner of Lake Ontario. It was a nice downwind run, not too out of control. I don't know, I think we saw 18 knots max on that leg. And it was funny, we had a Henderson 30 in our class, which is a lightweight speedster, and they didn't do well in the light upwind stuff. But once the breeze picked up, I mean, they just blew past us. They had to be doing at least 2 knots, maybe 3 knots faster than us. And we were kind of like, oh boy, here they go. They just blew past us. And then we also recognized that they had to go for 45 miles upwind in big breeze and big seas, and that they probably wouldn't have such a good time of it. And as it turns out, they broke their tiller and were unable to continue the race. But it was just a long beat, and we had 9 people on the boat, and everybody sat on the rail, and we worked the boat hard. We swapped drivers, and it was challenging steering. It wasn't the funnest sailing in the world, but we just we came here. We went through all the effort we did to go to Lake Ontario to complete our personal goal of 5 Great Lakes races. And, the thought of dropping out never, ever, ever, ever occurred to us. And we would have had to break something or sunk the boat or something horribly catastrophic to have dropped out.
I'm sure that having that kind of crew on board that is that experienced too doesn't hurt the process.
It doesn't, no. We had a great crew. In fact, we had a couple of local Canadians. You may recognize the name Magnus Clark. You interviewed him, I think, from the Red Herring. So he joined us, and then another local guy named Andre Beese, who was great as well. So not only were they great sailors, the two of them, but they also possessed local knowledge that we didn't have. So especially in the light stuff, where do you want to be relative to the shore, at this time of day? What do we anticipate we want to be when it gets dark? That was invaluable information for us.
You've had the opportunity to sail all 5 lakes, and Western Lake Superior is very much North Channel Lake. Do you have a favorite lake of the 5 that you've been on? And the follow-up question is, are the lakes different in the way they sail?
Do I have a favorite? I mean, I've spent the most time in Lake Huron. I've done the most Mackinac races. Plus, I have done some North Channel cruising back when my daughter was younger. We'd go up there after the Mac races. So, I like them all. Okay. They all have their characteristics. Lake Superior absolutely fascinates me. I've only done the race twice. And our deliveries back have been pretty much, go, we don't stop and smell the roses, look at the scenery. We do time it so we can, we stop in Munising and spend the night there, get up at 5:36 in the morning so we can see the pictured rocks at daybreak, which is spectacular viewing. Someday if I have more time, I wouldn't mind cruising around. We cut through the Apostle Islands on the way back. Didn't stop, but looked around. That looked very pretty. Very, we saw a couple of different spots where sailboats had anchored. But they all, Lake Superior has a completely different sea state than Michigan and Huron do. And both races I've done have been fairly moderate to light breeze, but I've had on both deliveries back, we've had more breeze, and it was out of the northwest, and so the sea state is definitely different. Ontario, with the breeze out of the east, the sea state was ridiculous. With the depth of the water, I figured it would be a longer wave period than what we had. It was explained to me that because this was new breeze that picked up, so there were new waves they hadn't built all the way across the lake, and they bounce off the shore and then head back out to the lake. That kind of creates the washing machine effect. So that makes sense. It just wasn't what I anticipated, but it wasn't horrible. It was just challenging to sail in, and we had I think we swapped amongst 3 or 4 drivers in that 45-mile leg. And everybody did a superb job. Not once did we stuff the bow into the back of the wave in front of us and stop the boat. We just kept going.
You'll be the 3rd Barthel Trophy winner we've talked to, and obviously that is a trophy that is the best overall finish between both the Mac races to Mackinac Island and the TransSuperior. That's got to be a big thing. I'm assuming that's your first time winning it.
Oh yeah, no, that's huge. Yeah, it is the first time winning it, and I'll be honest, we had such a poor Bayview Mac in our race. I didn't think we had a chance in hell of doing that. And going into the race, there was 12 or 13 boats that were in contention for it, and the only way to be in contention for the Barthel Trophy is to have raced both Mac races prior to the TransSuperior. So 12 or 13 boats, I can't remember, but one of those. And at that time, we were in 3rd place. Valor DBA Stripes was in 1st. Funtech Charlie Hess's J120 was in 2nd by just a little bit of time. We were 3rd, and I think Elevation was 4th. And so, unfortunately, Funtech had to withdraw at the last minute. And so we ended up in 2nd going into it, and we were like an hour and 38 minutes behind Stripes. And it's tough to make up that kind of time against a big boat. We certainly got a huge assist from the weather gods. At one point, I was watching them on the AIS, and they were presumably sailing upwind toward the finish. We were sailing upwind, I don't know, 80, 100 miles behind them, and we're only a half a knot slower than them. So they were obviously in light air, and I'm thinking, oh boy, we're beating those guys right now because we're only half a knot slower and we're a much slower boat. And then they finished, and then the breeze picked up, and the breeze was astern. So we spent our last, I don't know, 10 hours of that race in more breeze than they sailed in. So it turned out to be what we call a small boat race, in that the big boats finish, the breeze picks up, and the smaller boats sail the last, several hours of their race in more pressure, more air than the big boats did. So we certainly got an assist from the weather guys, but hey, I'll take the luck.
What goes through your mind when Canadian?
We sailed well too, obviously.
No, and I get that. What goes through your mind when a Canadian magazine calls you the Great Lakes, the new Great Lakes superstar, sailing superstar? Does it
I
does it
roll
have an
my
effect?
eyes.
Okay,
No, I mean it's
nice compliment.
it's a little too much hyperbole. I mean,
Okay,
we've gotten a lot of recognition in the last few years, and when I say we, the crew, 3 years ago we had 17 different people do the 4 races we did. Last year we had 18 different people doing the various distance races we did. This year we had 24. And so, one of my not peeves, but one thing that I wish was different is that they always recognize the owner of the boat. They spend less recognition on the crew, and I tell you, we don't do it alone. And the whole superstar thing, I mean, it's funny, it's gratifying, but it's too much. It's really too much.
okay.
I'm just a guy who likes sailboats and I'll put a crew together.
You look around now. You've had this great success in the levels and the fleets you're flying. Have you thought about maybe what the next step is, or does age sort of keep you in the area in the fleets that you're sailing now?
Well, it's America. It's 2025. I can be anything I want, so I self-identify as 32 years old, and not really, but that's my joke. And I'm a huge fan of modern medicine. I mean, the aortic valve replacement. I instantly felt better. It was fast. I walked into the hospital, and 29 hours later, I walked out. And I'm doing a little cardio rehab just to kind of get myself back up to shape because I was so idle and far less active during the early part of the summer. So it's going to take me a minute for my body to get back to where it was, but I plan to keep on sailing. Next, 2026 is a new year. I'm already planning out what I'm going to do. It will be less intense than this year because there's no TransSuperior. And then I would like to go back to Lake Ontario just because A, going to the locks is such a cool adventure. B, they're so damn nice up there. And I've got a lot to learn about Lake Ontario. So
the last 2 years, have you pointed towards this kind of result, or is it just the preparation is always the same and whatever happens, happens? Is there a difference between those two?
Preparation is always the same. I mean, I'm a little obsessive, you might say, about boat prep. So when we break something, it gets fixed. Last year after haul out, I discovered that my front end of the boat was getting ready to fall off. That was a huge repair job, and I think we talked about that. But I spent an awful lot of time repairing the bow of the boat. We had basically compression cracks at the aft end of the stem plate on the deck, where the stem plate and the deck met on the hull. I had compression cracks. So I had a good friend of mine, Will Sear, who's a naval architect, take a look at it. He helped out with the laminate schedule and got it all put together. And I got to say that repair job has held up beautifully. We added Starlink over the winter. We added what's called the Guzzle H2O water filtration system, which takes water up to the raw water intake. And so we have on-demand water. That probably saved us 150, 160 pounds of water bottles plus less litter, less plastic waste. It's environmentally sound. And so things like that. So I'm constantly looking at little things we can do to improve the boat, eliminate distractions, keep the sail inventory fresh, rig tune, yada, yada, yada. It's just, it's my hobby. I'm obviously rather passionate about it. And so, the 5 Lakes Challenge actually was, the whole idea for that was Sammy Irwin.
Yep.
Sammy Irwin worked on Bill Martin Stripes for many, many years. And Stripes did 4 lakes on a number of occasions. And Bill Martin apparently had talked about doing 5 lakes, never put it together. So Sammy actually called me and got some of our MAC crew together last fall and proposed the idea. We all looked at each other and said, hell yeah, we're in. It was just obvious, someone's got to do this. It might as well be us. So that's how that started. And so Sammy was the genesis of, the promoter of, the spiritual leader, the guru, the cheerleader, whatever you want to call it. But he's the guy that got us all going on this, and we picked it up and ran with it.
Fast Tango has become a brand in the Great Lakes as a sailing entity. It has, because people ask about the boat. Yeah. Would Dick Carter recognize the North American 40 that he designed 40 years ago?
Actually. So I am in infrequent but regular contact with Dick Carter, and he is probably more thrilled than we are with what we've done with his design. And he'd recognize it. The boat is still an NA40. It's been optimized. All the NA40s, or the NA40s that are still around, pretty much all of them have modified the deck a little bit. Magic Star had everything run back to the cockpit, which in some instances made sense, but at marked roundings and sail changes, it was all, elbows flying around in the cockpit, which wasn't good. We've kept the more traditional layout with the halyard winches forward. But we still, those boats came with 13 winches. I've got 9. And the previous owner, Ben Storms, who owned Fast Tango before I did, made that deck layout change. But replacing blocks with low friction rings where we can, replacing way with Dyneema where we can, recoring the boat where it got wet, that sort of stuff. So just I have probably a heavier maintenance schedule than most people.
I asked that question because we had a chance to interview him last year at better part of an hour, and Dick is 93, 94, someplace in that area. And he told me almost everything I needed to know about North Americans, and I don't remember much, but he was very proud of you and the way the boats perform. So I think that's kind of cool.
No, it is cool. When I got the award from Storm Trysail Club a couple of years ago, they actually invited Dick Carter to attend that, and I spent most of the evening, a very delightful evening, talking with Dick, and some of the stories when he was a younger guy. That guy is a true American badass. He did some really badass stuff in sailing. Look, he's got the 47-year-old boat of his. Is still out there being competitive, in all sorts of sailing conditions. Circling back to the Barthel Trophy, we took a good look at it, and back in the, I think, late 70s, early 80s, the criteria for the Barthel Trophy, they called it the Great Lakes Challenge, and they sailed an event in North American 40s. And so there are 3 North American 40s on there, I think, in 79, 80, and 81. So, we're the first NA40 back on that trophy in over 40 years, which is really cool.
Now, end of the season, there's a few things left, but obviously within the next 3 or 4 weeks, it's going to be up on the hard. Snow's coming. Yep. Preparation. Are you inside? Are there things you're going to do this winter to Tango to get it ready for next year? Yeah.
So, my summer well is at Bayview Yacht Club. Bayview Yacht Club is, amongst other things, a fully equipped boatyard, and we store boats on the premises. And so what I'll do is I'll store it there. Mast will be out. Um, I'll shrink wrap it so I could have protected environment on there. But I'm probably I'm itching to redo the bottom. I mean, it's maybe 97.5% perfect, so I need to make it 100% perfect. So I may do the bottom. As far as I know, I don't have any major projects. But like I said, last year we had the unexpected discovery of the front end issue. So barring no unexpected discoveries, I'll probably do a new bottom. I got some minor things. Right now I'm working on equipment. So when they measure these boats, they amongst other things, they weigh them. And so I can't change the weight of the boat unless I get remeasured, which I mean, there's really that much I can do to the boat. But, like equipment, just for example, I redid my emergency tiller, which weighed 10 pounds. Now it weighs 5 pounds. All right. So people say, oh, geez, that's only 5 pounds on a 17,000 pound boat. But it's all cumulative. All right. So if you can start working on equipment, and kind of the genesis of that was we were talking about our gear bags this year and how modern materials, technology, so on and so forth, manufacturing processes has all made of our gear much lighter.
Yeah.
The foul weather jacket I wear today weighs several pounds less than the ones you wore 20 years ago. You got 10 people on board, there's 30 pounds you save.
Right.
Going back to that water filter, saving 150, 160 pounds of carrying fluid. So we look at stuff like that. I will send out an email to the crew, ask, hey, what can make your job different? What did you find distracting? What needs it? How can we make it? So we look at ergonomic things we might be able to do. But nothing big planned, just, normal tweaking and maintenance.
Last question. Was this one of the more rewarding and personally satisfying summers that you've spent on a boat?
Absolutely. I wasn't very happy with our Baby Mackinac finish, but a lot of that was because there was a big hole underneath the Duck Islands, and we did not do as good of a job escaping that as our competitors did. So hats off to them. I was also the Mackinac race chair this year. So in that sense, I got to be on stage for all the awards. I got to hand them out, and I had an absolute blast doing it. It was so much fun. We also got to recognize our Bayview Island Awards party band, the Endless Summer Band. It was probably the first in the history of human endeavor Old Goat band, because they played for us at their 25th time. So that was, that being on stage, handing out the awards, recognizing the band, that's like the reward for being Mackinac chairman. So I had an absolute riot, and looking forward to just being a civilian next year.
We happened to get a chance to be Saturday morning as the race of the Bayview race took off to go to Port Huron, and we were up for the party at Chicago the next Tuesday. And there's no doubt that Bayview's party is a lot better than Chicago's.
Yeah, I like them both, but and Chicago's has gotten a lot better. They never had a band; they were inning, so they're moving in the right direction for sure. But yeah, ours is the best post regatta party in the world. I've been to lots of them.
Well, we appreciate you being on. Appreciate the time spent, and more importantly, congratulations on all the stuff that you've had the opportunity to succeed this year. And it's been a fun summer. It's always fun talking to Tim Prophit. We had an opportunity to talk to him quite a few over the last few years, and it's always fun to watch and see what kind of program he has. As mentioned in the interview, Fast Tango has become its own brand, and I think that's kind of cool for somebody that's not racing at the GL52 level. So that was one of those conversations. We wanted to make a point from last week. We have apparently have a problem to distinguish between Laura Muma and Sarah Renz, both public relations sailing experts from the Chicago area, and we kind of interspersed their names last week. We want to apologize for using that, and both Sarah and Laura have been very terrific to us, and Laura also was nice enough to get us information on the Ohana incident. We're not going to get into whole detail about that. We did get an answer from the Chicago Yacht Club, and that'll play itself out as it goes through, and I guess it's boys being boys, but we'll figure that one out at the time. So we wanted to make sure we had those names that I screwed up. Just make sure we get them right because they're both great young ladies and something we appreciate all the help they've given us. So we'll be back in a second. Welcome back. We're talking with our favorite great sailor, Wally Cross, one of the Quantum guys from down the street on Harper. I wanted to talk to Wally last week. We talked about the desire to win, learning to win, and some really good insight about the mental aspects of the game. And that's something we've been talking about a lot over the last few shows. We've been talking last week about it's the fall, what you can do to get ready for next year, how to experiment a little bit. I'm not sure that's the right word, but at least press the limits of what your abilities are. Let's talk the mechanical parts of things on the boat. We've had this idea, we all want to win. We all had this sort of process that we're working towards so that we're on the same page. And I think that's part of the game. But what mechanical things can we look at in the fall from a sailing perspective? Because you obviously still have the boat in the water. Mm-hmm. So what would I be looking at, not only to get the boat, maybe experiment a little bit, but then what I might be doing during this part of the season to make it easier to take the boat out of the water?
Yeah, no, that's a great comment. And, Greg, I mentioned last time that this is my favorite time of the year because a lot of the pressure is off, and I've got a lot of time to get out with customers or anybody that wants me to come out and, quite frankly, just look over their whole boat physically. And for sure, being the sailmaker that I am, the first thing I do is take pictures of sails and look at the sails and say, and I put them on my computer, digitize them, look at the shape and say, is the shape still good? Or can the shape be adjusted a bit to be a little bit better for next year? Or is the sail really in that need of replacement? So that's number one. And then we'll look at all the other things. I was on a boat last night. We're looking things like the running rigging needs replacing. The jammers weren't holding the halyards. The instruments aren't necessarily working. They should be calibrated. All that stuff should get done now before spring because it's not a rush time.
Right.
You've got time to think about it. Quite frankly, you've got time to research prices because prices are never better than now. People in my business, in the marine business, they're all looking for work for the winter. So you're going to get good value. Okay. So you've got time to do this. This is the right time.
Should I get my sails cleaned regularly if I'm just a regular racer cruiser?
Well, I mean, that's a personal preference. Okay. That's really a personal. If you like white sails, that's fine. Cleaning sails doesn't make them faster. It doesn't necessarily make them last longer. It just makes them look whiter. Right, so if you've got mildew, if you've got spiders, and that kind of bugs you, sure, clean them. But it depends what your priorities are. Okay. Do I want to look good or do I want to sail fast?
This is a side, again, sometimes things pop in my brain in the middle of nowhere. You mentioned that sometimes instruments aren't working, right? If I'm a racer cruiser, we're not talking about the 52s, we're not talking about the Santa Cruzes, just a regular kind of guy. What are the sort of the 2 or 3 instruments that I really should have on my boat?
Well, first and foremost, you need to have a compass.
Right.
Compass needs to be accurate. And then you should have a GPS so you always know where you're at. Boat speed, it's nice to have. Those are the minimum. Having a Windex up high so you have an idea what your wind direction is. Those would be the true minimum. Now, if you can get other values like wind speed, wind direction from your instruments, that's great. But in my opinion, only if it's accurate. So many of these instruments just aren't accurate, and bad information develops bad habits or bad decision making. So, and now there's so many good small instruments that work off a GPS, the Varcos or the Velocitech. Those are great instruments. They help you with starting. They locate the 2 ends of the starting line and tell you where you are relative to the starting line. Also, they give a heel, trim fore and aft. So those smaller instruments really do a nice job. Okay.
In the last part, we talked about putting the boat away. You said something about, there's always great value. I guess it's cheaper prices for sales if you're looking at those kinds of things. We always put our boat away. We never think about, oh my God, we'll do it in the spring because we just want to get the boat put away. Savings for sales right now, buying sales right now, has got to be better than any time of the rest of the year. Is that fair?
It's just fair. Like I said, anything in the marine industry is pretty much a good deal right now. just because people want work for the winter. Companies want work for the winter. I'm looking forward to going to the Annapolis Boat Show. I haven't been there in 20 years, but I'm going to go this year. I just want to see what all the other marine industries are doing for products and prices and things like that. This is a great time of the year to do your shopping if, in fact, you think there's something that could help your sailing.
I say all that because we made a to-do list last fall, and I finished the to-do list, give or take, something in the middle of June. And I thought this year when we put it away, we're going to put it away correctly. So we've got we've got all the little stickies in the boat. We're going to do this, that, or the other, and put it away so when we come to spring, I don't have to worry about anything more than maybe painting the bottom, getting it squared away, and maybe a little bit of wax just from the winter's wear. And I don't think I've ever done that because it's just been, okay, it's away. I'm just glad it's shrunk wrap. I'll deal with it in the spring. But we never do.
No, you're right. And again, this time of year, it's great to get yourself some wet notes and just write down, some of the settings you had for sails, what your sails are. Maybe take a picture of your sails. Just anything you can log what your equipment is, what stage it is at, and ideas that can help you. I always say if you can just isolate 10 things to make your boat a little bit better boat next year, you'll continually improve each year after that.
Your better means faster. My better means comfort. So maybe one of those 10 things for me might be
No
a thicker
question.
mattress.
No question.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate all the tips you've given us. We're going to do one more show, and we're going to have a conversation about 2026, and we'll do that in a couple of weeks. But we appreciate you being part of the show.
No, I enjoy it.
Thanks.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is ready? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes. Look at that. You didn't even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you got to get it trending.
No, you're doing it wrong.
Let's go.
Can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Welcome back. We're talking to Eva Paschke, who is a Grosse Pointe South graduate, and somebody we're going to talk to about being very, very brave. Picked up a recent. I'm going to let you talk about the award because I'm going to mess up the name of the award, but it's an award for valor and safety, and you just picked it up from U.S. Sailing. It happened in September, but it's the Arthur B. I'm going to get it right now. Tell me again.
The Hansen Award.
Okay, Arthur B. Hansen Award. Have I got that right?
Yep.
Okay. It's given out annually to folks who rescue, and it's just a sort of a heroic award. And we're going to talk a little bit about her activity with an off-coast blue water racing out of North Cape. And I think it's such a terrific award. We've done a couple of stories on people who've had this opportunity. And this is the best of all for me because it really shows something that is so different than just somebody who's a good sailor, because obviously you did some great. So set us up. First of all, thank you for talking to us a little bit. And you're a Marquette University student. And so that really has no play in this other than the university is aware of it. But talk about the award, and then we'll get into the specifics.
Okay. Yeah. So the award was set up by Arthur B. Hansen, who was actually one of the first guys to use an EPIRB for an offshore race. I think I got that right. Among other very interesting and brave safety-related things. So this award is generally, and you can look all this information up on U.S. Sailing if you yourself are interested in reading anything about it. They have a page dedicated to it. But it is for some sort of notable rescue effort. Ours was in regards to an MOB situation that we had.
Okay. So to start with, this happens last September of 24.
Yep.
And then you guys are in a race of North Cape for about 4 or 5 years, did a national offshore race for colleges, which was very successful. They didn't do it this year for a variety of reasons. So you guys raced around the western parts of Lake Erie, and I put you back on the boat. What boat? What kind of boat were you on?
We were on a J105.
Okay. So you're on this great boat. Obviously, you've got your crew. I'm assuming all Marquette students.
Yep, we were built off the Marquette sailing team, was what I put the call out to.
So kind of walk us through the experience. What happened?
Yeah, so kind of a quick needed background, but my crew and the Marquette sailing team in general is built up honestly predominantly of sailors who are new to the sport in college. So we are open, we take everybody. We're looking to really inspire students and young people to get into the sport, what we would call sport stewardship. And that was true for this crew as well. I had one sailor who had done a collegiate keelboat regatta before, but just that one time. And then I had a sailor who sails primarily on J70s. And then I had a couple people who were either only had done sea scows or one sailor who had never raced keelboats before ever. And so my goal as the person who's definitely the predominantly experienced one was to just get them out there having fun. I didn't expect to win. I expected maybe to even make a little bit of embarrassment of ourselves, but I was mostly focused on getting them out there and enjoying themselves. But going into it, I realized that conditions were going to be, I guess, not mild. That's for sure. It wasn't the craziest weather, I've seen per se, but it's probably the most high wind weather that some of the newer people to sailing would have seen, as that we don't race dinghies and anything, crazy. And so it was sustained 15-ish, maybe saw a 20 knot gust in there. And another big note is that there was a lot of land friction
Right.
with the wind. So basically, there's a lot of buildings or whatever, and that would increase the likelihood of shifts, gusts based on the wind trying to find its way through those things on land. And it was the last race of the day. We had kind of a rocky day in terms of, doing a good job competitively. But we're having a great time. We were out there, managed to put a spinner crop a few times, which was honestly a huge win for us to do that successfully. And it was the last race of the day. Things had picked up a little bit more in terms of conditions, and we were headed downwind in a jam race. The race committee had said this last race will be jam based on, rising conditions. And we were going downwind on port tack, and I had my lady who was in the box or the pit, and she didn't have a job downwind at that moment. And so I said, hey, Ivana is her name, do me a favor and go stand in front of the boom and let me know if you're feeling anything in it, basically, which is pretty common to have a human preventer up there, as we say. And then what had happened was, because of that land friction, there was a shift within a puff, and we auto-jibed, and she had her elbows up on top of the boom like that, which I was actually about to tell her to stop doing. And because of that, I believe it's because of that, she was taken, not just knocked to the deck by the boom, but she was taken across the boat, and she kind of folded her body over the lifelines. Eventually, we learned that she had hit her forehead on the top sides of the boat, the hull side, and it caused a laceration a good few inches actually on her forehead. She later had to be hospitalized, and she hung on to a stanchion, which resulted in a hematoma on her, I believe, right arm. And then she kind of hung on to the stanchion for a few seconds, and then she was gone. Previous to this, again, I knew that I was taking a relatively inexperienced green crew out, and I would never have wanted, I was driving, by the way, the boat, and I would have wanted to do that if I didn't feel confident that between me and the boat owner on board, what they do is they basically put out the call to sailors at the yacht club for, can these kids borrow your boat? You can go sit in the back. You can't touch anything, but you're there in case of emergency. That between me and Lee Shock, the owner of the boat, we'd be able to basically make sure no one gets into any life-threatening danger, or that we can't get them out of. And I talked with my crew previously. I've done the Safety at Sea course. I have done that. I've done many, many Mackinac man overboard drills. And so I kind of kicked into autopilot, honestly. I had told my crew previously, the two things that you guys can do to help me, because I knew that Lise could furl a jib and I could take care of starting the engine, or the two things that my crew can do to help me is there's this thing on the back of the boat called the life sling. That needs to be deployed immediately. Right. And the other thing is we need pointers. So one of the main things that any keelboat offshore or not offshore sailor will tell you is that when you have a man overboard, you need to point at them, because you don't want to lose sight of them. You don't want to lose track of them until it's humanly impossible. Have eyes on that person. And so really proud of my crew. Immediately life sling was deployed. I didn't even have to call for it. And I had 2 pointers, not just one. So I started the engine. So we had auto jibed from port tack onto starboard tack. I started the engine, rounded up, came head to wind. The boat owner leaves shock, furled the jib, and then I come back down around underneath our sailor in the water with the life sling trailing behind. And we could tell that I was hearing reports on her condition. We knew that she was bleeding from her forehead, but she was moving around, clearly conscious and able to swim a short distance. And she managed to get to that life sling, and we pulled her aboard. Something that is lucky. I recommend sailing with a medical professional if you ever have the ability to do so for these sorts of things. But we had a student sailor on board who's an EMT, and I knew that. And so I told her, her name's Eva Brad. I had told her, hey, Ava, there's a boat towel, starboard bunk. Go grab that. Well, Lise grabs the med kit because only Lise knew where the med kit was. That's one thing that I would say is add that to your safety talk. Make sure everyone knows where the med kit is. And so she immediately administered aid, compression on the head wound, and later on managed to get some gauze out of the med kit, wrap her head up. Well, a safety boat came to pick her up, and I sent her along with Ivana to land to then be received by paramedics.
How old was she?
Oh, geez. I believe Ivana was 20 at the time.
Okay. So you think of somebody that there was a number of overboards about the Chicago to Mac and the Port Huron to Mac this year. And in some cases, there was an 80-year-old guy that just literally got tossed over the lines completely. And you think of those folks, and a 20-year-old, and obviously when you flip it like you're talking about, I would think you'd have to worry about concussion and any variety of other injuries, which you have to really, be careful on. I'm really curious, and maybe this is for the audience and maybe for the guys that don't know. When you're in that situation, your race is over. Am I correct?
Absolutely. I mean, as soon as I saw her go over and I radioed, man overboard, just to let everyone know what was going on, our race was over. And then I believe the Grand Valley team and perhaps another vessel, also their race was over because they saw it happen and they stood by to assist in case it was needed, in case we weren't able to handle the situation ourselves.
Okay. And so for folks that don't know, if you are going to assist, in this case, Grand Valley or any other college boats, they get time corrected when as they're going through the search. There's actually formulas when people help out, so you're not losing something. So you're being obviously you're doing the smart thing to make sure people are safe, but you still do have the ability to continue the race. Is I think something that folks should know. I think that's kind of important. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. You understand as a sailor and certainly as a skipper in that situation how important safety is. I think back to last year for the Queen's Cup we were on the back of the 52, and there's a big box, right? And in the box is anything that floats. And the first line from Skip Diebel, another North Cape guy, if anybody goes overboard, just grab anything that floats and throw it, right?
Yep.
As long as it floats, that's all you care about. And I think that's the point. But having the wherewithal, and I should point out, this award is not given out sort of measly easily. It's a big deal. So I know you're being modest about the attempt of saving somebody's life, but this is a pretty big deal for U.S. sailing, and you should be real proud of yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was interesting. I had to impress upon my crew, as a bunch of specifically non-big keelboat sailors, the gravity of what we had done to recover our own sailors, be able to handle, not our mistake per se, but our situation, our monkey, our circus, to be able to handle that and to do what we did so textbookly within 3 minutes, I think was the consensus. She was in the water no longer than 3 minutes. I mean, I tried to tell them about, we're in good company. That previous season, Mackinac season, I believe Madcap had won the award for the assistance of some man overboard on the Chicago race. I could be getting that boat wrong. But, they were up on the website, their previous recipients. And I sat there like, wow, I was on that race. I know all about that situation. We're in good company with this award. And it does mean something that a bunch of, brand new Midwest sailors, my team, could go and feel confident in that.
I understand that the safety is involved. You're on a boat, but I don't think anybody would argue that I think they recognize when somebody falls overboard. Here's my question to you. It's always you hear about these, you practice and you do all the rest of it. You've never really seen anybody that happened to them, right? Now it happens to you. Does it leave an impression upon you even more so that safety is even maybe a little more important than what you thought before the accident?
I think it is. Specifically the fact that, I sat there and sat through the safety at sea course and whatever, and I'm like, am I going to be done yet? Like, how much longer? I kind of need to get the certificate. But in the moment, I was pretty damn happy that I had done it because, like I said,
Right.
that autopilot can kick in. When you know what to do, it makes everything so much easier
Right.
when you know what to do.
Insurance is a good thing, right? That's why you don't expect your car to get wrecked, and then it gets wrecked. You got somebody to help you out. I get that problem. So
Mhm.
I think that's pretty cool. What's those closest to you? I'm sure there's been lots of accolades for winning the award. Where did you get the award too? I'm just curious when they where they awarded it to you.
Yeah, so we received notice that the award either would eventually go through, basically for sure. There's a lot of paperwork that's involved with this stuff. Much sooner than when we received the award through a presentation sort of style event. We did it at our college's home hosted fall regatta up here, Marquette,
That's cool.
which was this past weekend. Um, but yeah, it was kind of awesome. All the sailors had come in for the day, and we did it before the awards, the regatta, and the U.S. sailing representative had come up and said a little piece, and we got up there, had our pictures taken, kind of what you'd expect.
Of all the folks you know, mom and dad, and with friends and all the rest of it, who was the most proud?
That's hard to say. I think probably my father. He's a lifelong sailor, like serious, competitive sailor. I mean, he spent a lot of time trying to convince me that it wasn't a failing on my part that I lost someone, and much more a,
That's good.
impressive thing that,
Right.
because when it's on your watch, it's
Right.
tough. It's you take on a lot of responsibility leading the charge or helming the boat, and sometimes that responsibility means that you have to, clean up your mess or make sure that you get all your people back.
So did the compassion from dad surprise you?
I wouldn't say surprised. I mean, we don't always have heart to hearts per se, but I
Right.
mean, it was nice. I knew that I could trust him when he said those things.
Just briefly, I know you spent some of the summer on Fast Tango. There's Tim Prophit will be on the show a little bit later. We're going to talk about his five. Tim's been on the show a number of times. We're going to talk about that 5 lake odyssey that is just completed. You were part of some of that, and Tim went through some medical things, which I'll talk to him about. It's been an interesting summer for him because it's had the very first time way back in May, the engines and oil spills and all kinds of stuff. Just briefly, what was it? What was it like spending some time on Tango this summer?
If I had to pick a favorite boat, like individual boat, not kind of boat, not whatever, a boat, it would be Fast Tango. I grew up sailing on Fast Tango as a kid. My dad and Tim are friends, and I would grow up going because Tim has a daughter who's a little older than me and my sister, and we'd go to North Channel and just cruise around. And that was one of the things that inspired my love of sailing. Even, I mean, I sat there during storms, just huddled up on deck, not able to help with anything, but I'd watch him and my dad and Tim handle it, and I thought, wow, this is really effing cool. I want to be able to do this one day. So whenever I get to go out on Tango for a race offshore or otherwise, I kind of sit there and I'm just happy to be there beyond the fact that I'm sailing. It's being on that boat specifically.
We had a chance to interview Dick Carter, who or actually designed the North American 40 last year, a 96-year-old boat designer. And he's been credited with, you may or may not know, but he's been credited with all kinds of, uh, he's never got it patented. There's all kinds of things on race boats now that he came up with way back in 1970 that were eventually used as industry standards. And him talking about that North American 40 and all the things that had happened to us was a really fun. Talking to a guy 96, sometimes he doesn't always go together. But talking to the guy who designed that boat was kind of fun last year. It was a fun interview. So it was one of those things.
Sounds like he's a cool guy.
He is. Well, listen, congratulations on this. We will put this up here pretty quick. You should be real proud of yourself. And obviously, sailing with the kind of folks you're sailing with on Tango, you've had some pretty good teachers. I'm sure you're a great sailor yourself, but having the mentors that the folks that you've had I'm sure had a lot to do with the award, certainly your bravery. And I'm sure that young lady that you helped that saved, big deal. So congratulations. Appreciate your time and have a great what's left of the summer.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Wanted to thank Eva and Wally and Tim. We've got the 52s coming up for the next show. We'll be there this weekend with covering all the big boys at the Marquette Bay Yacht Club. And we just wanted to thank the guys in back, and we'll see you next week.